Hello everybody, it's me again with another video about chess traps. Today we are going to be looking at the Max Lange Attack, which is basically a gold mine for chess traps. Now this video may be a little longer, so I'll include timestamps for you to move around more efficiently. By the way, there are many ways how one can reach the Max Lange Attack position. You can play, I don't know, Italian, Scotch game, or I like to play bishop's opening, so e4, e5, bishop to c4. Here if they go knight to f6, I go d4, they usually capture, I go knight to f3, they go knight to c6, I castle, and here usually they go bishop to c5. So this position is called Max Lange Attack, nothing crazy yet, very standard position. White is down a pawn, but we are going to get rolling with our attack very quickly. Right away, actually, we are going to play the move e5 and attack the knight. Here, black needs to make a choice, whether to run away with their knight or play the correct move, which is the d5, counterattacking our bishop. But first, let's just see what's wrong with the black's position if they rather choose to move the knight. So, if the knight goes to g4, this is actually the only playable square for the knight to jump to. We can now support our pawn with the bishop, and here pretty much everybody is going to castle, which is the correct move, but after that we are going to hit them with h3. And the poor knight has only one square to go to, which is h6, and that's it for the knight. We are going to capture it, and now we force the black king to have a open door day and damage their structure even more. You see double pawns here, double pawns here. Next thing, we want to go c3. They shouldn't capture our pawn, but usually they do, and let our knight to join the game. And if they play d6, we don't want to exchange these pawns, but we want to go knight to e4, creating some threats of giving this check or capturing this bishop, and white should just have a really comfortable game after this. So let's go back and let's have a look what's even more wrong if they play some other knight move. If they go knight to e4, this is pretty much a blunder and they are going to be down a piece soon. We hit the knight with queen to e2. They are naturally going to try to save it with the move d5, which will take en passant, and here usually they try bishop to f5, but we are just simply going to add more pressure to this knight. And here in this position most people try these tactics with a castling, and after we capture the knight they try to pin this knight to our queen with their rook. But this doesn't work because we can hit them with bishop takes on f7 with check. So they are going to capture the bishop, and we are going to give them yet another check with queen to c4. They cannot block this check because of knight to g5. And if they move the king to safety, here we could just simply take this bishop for free and save the knight, but it's better to first just take this pawn on c7, because it is a forcing move. They need to move the queen now, and for example they recapture. Here we are going to take this bishop and we are up a piece and easily winning. So let's go all the way back to our Max Lange attack position. So as you could see, knight to e4 is no good for them, but even worse is if they go knight to h5. For this one we are going to go knight to g5, and this is pretty much self-explanatory because there are just too many threats. We are threatening to capture on f7, and we are also threatening to capture this knight. And black cannot really save everything, and they need to choose which piece they want to save, and the other one is going to fall. Just to give you an example line, which is the most common line on lichess, they try to capture this pawn on e5 in order to have a protection of the f7 pawn. But here we are going to capture with the bishop. They are going to capture with the knight. We can capture the knight, and after they capture with the king, we can capture this knight, and after they block this, we are going to also capture this bishop. And we are up a piece and up a castled king, I would say. And their king is on a funny square. So once again, totally winning for white. Alright, let's go back. Now there is one last knight move that I want to cover, and this is my personal favorite. And that is when they move the knight all the way back to g8. Now here is a really funny line that I look forward playing every time that I play Max Lange Attack. Here we are also going to go knight to g5 with a clear threat of capturing on f7, and the only convenient way for black to save this pawn is to play knight to h6. Here we are going to play this silent move rook to e1, and in black's mind there will be like, oof, I'm so happy I can castle and not get into any more trouble, right? Well, they are going to get in so much more trouble after we play queen to d3, and we are also threatening checkmate. So, once again, the only logical way to stop this checkmate is to play g6, right? Well, after that, we can play queen to h3. Pretty odd move, but creating another threat, trying to capture the knight, which is no longer protected, and also the knight is pinned, it cannot move, because if it would move anywhere, then we can capture on h7 with checkmate. So, what can they do? Well, there is one thing they can do, and that is to protect the knight with the king. And here we are going to blow them away with queen captures on h6. And they will be like, whoa, free queen for a knight? Let me grab that. And we are going to go knight takes on f7, discard check. And they might be like, well, alright, let me go back. They can have our queen. We are going to recapture with the rook and we'll be fine and the material is going to be equal. But no, we are not going to capture the queen, but rather we are going to give this check, bishop h6. And here they get the point. You know, king to g8 is forced and we grab the queen with yet another discovered check. Such nastiness. So they have to go to the corner and we can have some fun, you know, checking the king around. Now at this point they should just give up their rook for the knight. But if they don't, then they have to go king g8. And after this we are going to give them this discovered check. After which we can grab this rook with the bishop. And after they capture our knight, we capture the pawn, they capture the bishop, we capture this bishop. And we are going to be like, hey, have fun trying to develop your pieces after I, you know, get my rook to the back rank and give a check. And you know what, let me give you another check. And they will be like, whoa, that's a free exchange. Well, yes, but now have fun trying to stop my unstoppable queen promotion. Well, you see, this is just hilarious. Alright, let's go back all the way to our initial Max Lange Attack position, which was pawn to e5. Alright, we have just looked at all these, you know, knight parkours and how we can easily punish them. But what if our opponent is prepared and they know the correct move, which is the d5? Well, in that case, we are going to first capture the knight. They are most naturally going to capture the bishop. And here there are many ways how you can continue this position, but I am going to recommend go rook to e1 check first. Now, there are two ways how black can deal with this check. The first and pretty obvious one is to block the check with the bishop. And then there is the second move. If for some reason black is fighting against the castling rights, they can play king to f8. Now this is pretty uncommon move, but in these variations there are so many nasty tricks that I just wanted to include this anyway. Firstly, we want to go knight to g5. Now, our pawn is hanging two different ways. So let's see. If they capture with the g-pawn, we have a crazy move Knight takes on f7, forking the rook and the queen. So probably the king is going to capture our knight, but gets hit with queen to h5 check. If the king decides to go to g8, we are going to simply win the queen with this check. And if the king rather decides to go to one of these two dark squares, then we are going to be able to give this check with the bishop, and this is actually forced mate in a few moves. Have fun analyzing it at home. I'm not going to spend your precious time doing it here. Alright, well, anyways, taking with the g-pawn looked wrong from the beginning, so let's see what happens if they capture with their queen. Well, in this case, we are going to go knight to e4, forking the queen and the bishop. So the queen needs to move in such a way that it keeps an eye on the bishop, right? If the queen goes to e7, this is actually a blunder. We can hit them with bishop to g5. Now queen to e5 is forced as it wants to cover the bishop. But now we have another crazy move, knight to f6. And what's happening is we are hitting the queen with our rook, but the queen cannot really go away from the e-file, because if it does, for example, I don't know, let's say queen to d6, now we have queen to e8 checkmate. So actually the queen is lost in this variation. But this only works if they play queen to e7. Let's see what happens if they play either queen to f5 or queen to e5. No matter which one of these moves they play, we are going to capture the bishop and force them to recapture with the queen. And now we are going to play b4, which is a super tricky move. It is a pawn push, very annoying for black, and although it can be taken either with the knight, with the queen, or with the en passant rule, none of them is going to help black whatsoever. So the worst one of these moves would be if they capture the pawn with their queen. This simply walks into bishop a3, pinning their queen to the king and winning the game on the spot. So what happens if they capture this pawn with their knight? This move walks into another really annoying pawn push, and we can play pawn to c3, and this is a nasty move as this pawn cannot be taken. If they capture the pawn, then queen to d8 is checkmate. And another thing about this move, how about they would like to move the knight out of the danger? Well, they cannot do that either. If they move if they move the knight anywhere, let's say back to c6, they are going to get hit with bishop a3, and they will lose the queen instead. So what happens if they take the pawn with the en passant? Well, this one is a little more tricky, but we are still winning, don't worry. We are going to first hit them with bishop a3, but this time they are able to block this attack with their knight. Next we will develop our queen to d2, so we are hitting the knight twice, and their response is forced. They need to cover this knight somehow. And actually there is only one way to protect this knight, and that's with the a-pawn. Now we are going to capture this pawn with our a-pawn. This way we are unleashing our rook, and we have a little tactics which they need to be aware of. So if they play just some random move, let's say they develop the bishop, we can actually take this knight for free, and they cannot recapture it because now their rook is hanging. Because of this, they need to find the only move, or one of the two moves that they need to play, and that's either to play rook to a6, so it's on a square where it's protected, or to move it out of the way, so this tactics doesn't work. But still, we have this push pawn to c3, and once again this pawn cannot be captured because of queen to d8 checkmate, and of course that the knight cannot move away because, you know, the queen would be hanging. So this is still winning for white. Alright. Let's go back in time, because you can have this sort of fun only and only if they move their king to the f8 after it is checked from our rook. Most human and logical response in this position would be anyways to play bishop to e6. Now, knight to g5 is still the move that we want to play, and let me tell you, their hands will be itching to capture your pawn with the queen. And it is actually the most played move in this position, according to Lichess database, and it is also the losing one. So let me show you, if they capture the pawn with their queen, now we can capture this bishop, they have to recapture with their pawn and get hit with queen to h5 check. So most players block this check and then realize that they are just losing this bishop for free. Oh, that's a pity. And on top of it, in this position, everybody seems to be castling, thinking that they need to get their king to safety right away. And now you can hit them with bishop to g5, and they are going to also be losing exchange. Although, for some reason, the engine doesn't think that this is the strongest move in this position, but, well, I play this all the time. Let's go back. So, capturing with the queen is a blunder. How about they capture with their g-pawn? Well, this is pretty much the same. We can capture this bishop, and after they recapture, we can give this check, and after they move anywhere, we can take this bishop. So it's basically the same, even though maybe worse, because now they cannot even castle. So what is the correct move then? Well, according to my engine, the correct move is to play g6. And actually less than 5% of the players in this position play this move. And then there is the second kind of correct move, which is the second most played move, and that's queen to d5. After this we are going to play knight to c3, and on first sight it may appear as we just don't like horses and they can capture it, but of course that would result in them losing their queen, because their bishop is not able to recapture because it is pinned. So they cannot capture this knight, but their queen is under attack. And actually their queen needs to stay in touch with both of these bishops, as they are pretty vulnerable. So in this position, queen to f5 is forced. Now we have yet another tricky pawn push, and that is g4, harassing the queen. If you notice, both of our pawns are hanging, but neither of them can be captured. If they capture our g-pawn, well, thank you for your queen. And if they capture our f-pawn, here we can jump to d5 with our knight, not only harassing the queen, but also attacking the weak c7 square, which leads to this fork. So once again, the response from black is forced. Queen needs to go to d8 in order to cover the c7 pawn, but now we hit them with rook captures on e6 with check. So they are of course going to recapture, and now we take this with our knight, and look at this, we are hitting the queen, this bishop and this c7 pawn, and on top of it they cannot even capture our uncovered knight because, well, because of this royal fork. So because of these reasons they cannot capture the f-pawn, and their response is forced. The queen has to go to g6. After this we are going to continue with knight to e4. So we are hitting this bishop. It would most likely go back to b6, and after this we are going to continue with yet another tricky pawn push, and that is f4. So with this move our threat may be rather obvious. We would like to push f5 and fork the bishop and the queen, but the funny thing is that black has nothing to stop this. If they try moving the bishop or the queen away, they are going to get into losing positions. Let's see this. If they move the bishop anywhere, let's say d7, well, now they are kind of exposing their king to some nasty discoveries with this knight. And that is not good. So what if they move the queen? Well, in that case, we are going to capture this bishop, damage their structure and push f5 anyway. And with this we are hitting the queen, hitting this pawn, and actually anywhere the queen moves, by the way, she has only these two squares, she's just going to get harassed with our bishop and with our knight. And actually it will end up losing for black. So going back, the best thing black can do is in this position is actually to castle and simply get forked. And for some mysterious reason it is actually alright for black. They can exchange this bishop for two pawns, and the engine says it's equal or even slightly better for black. Well, I'm not really engine, I would play for white pieces anytime in this position. So if this is the most correct play from black and after 15 moves they are down a piece, well, I say this opening is still success. And that's pretty much everything I wanted to share with you about the Max Lange Attack. Have fun playing it, take care and bye.